I want to tell you a story about my family. I grew up in St. Louis, or I was born in St. Louis. I grew up in New York. We moved there when I was 6, moved to New York when I was 6. And my brothers have told me these stories, and my mom did too. My mom is the featured person in this story. My brothers told me this story in the 60s. They lived in a north kind of close-in suburb of St. Louis. And St. Louis is a tricky town. It's kind of a southern town, has a long history of racism. And my family lived in that north part, which today is all African American, all that way. And the infrastructure, and they are not well cared for. The infrastructure of the city and so forth is uneven. It's not great. Some things have improved, but back in the late 60s and into the 70s, it was a tough time. And my brothers tell me the story of my mom. My parents actually were civil rights activists. I mean, there's a picture of me being carried as a baby in a march that my mom's in the 60s. And she came in, my brothers say she came in, and my brother said they've never seen her so mad. She came stomping in and just storming around the house. And she said it was because it was something a neighbor had said to her. And a neighbor had said to her, they're selling and moving out because a colored family is moving in. Her comment was they said they didn't want to be contaminated by them. I'm proud of my mama. She was so mad. I'm telling you, that's the reaction Jesus gives here. You look at those first verses in chapter 15. Here they are. Now the tax collectors and the sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the most religious people, muttered, "This man welcomes sinners, and he even eats with them." This is the only spot in Scripture where you see Jesus react quite this way, where he overturns the money changers and things like that. But in a teaching moment, he doesn't do 1, he doesn't do 2, he does 3. Wham, 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 when he hears this. You had 100 sheep and you lost 1. You go find them? And if you find them, do you cheer and celebrate? Yeah, you do. What if you're a widow and your only source of income is 10 gold coins and you lose 1? You're going to hunt till you find it and then call your neighbors and say, let's have a glass of wine to celebrate. You're going to cheer. And what if, and this one hits right close to home, doesn't it? What if you had 2 kids and you lost one of them? What wouldn't you do? Good enough for you? I can just hear Jesus. You want to know the heart of my Father? Let me tell you this story. And you get this story. It's my favorite story of Jesus. It's my favorite one. I can hardly read it. Sorry. You had to get through it. I can hardly read it. Because your kid's dead. It's alive. It's a miracle. You know, there's a lot of grief given in recent years for a song we're going to sing today, which is Reckless Love. And you may not be aware of this. Maybe you are. Maybe you're fully conversant and have watched 10 podcasts on it. But in the Christian community, when that song Reckless Love came out, people were very critical. Because reckless, God can't be. Reckless is bad, right? Reckless means thoughtless or foolish, unplanned, dumb, right? Are you with me? So how can God be that? When Jesus tells this story to his audience, think about it. So he's ratcheted up the stakes. 1 in 100 sheep, yeah, we get that. We'd hunt for it. If you're a widow and you lose 10%, yeah, I get it. What if you had 2 sons? And then, think about it, Jesus' audience all sitting there, Jewish audience. And by the way, and essentially he says, and a younger son, a man had 2 sons, and the younger son came to his father and said, "Dad, I want my portion of the inheritance." You know what the audience must have said? Well, the answer to that is, what inheritance are you speaking of? You are the younger son. We're not dividing up the estate. You can't do that. It always went to one kid. Because otherwise you're chopping it up and chopping it up and chopping it up and chopping it up. It goes to one kid. And if you had other kids, you might try to help them out, get a profession, a career, something. But the oldest one got the inheritance. And so Jesus' audience, first of all, must be going, he dared to ask? The father's response should have been, what inheritance? And then the father gives it to him. And now Jesus' audience is like, well, this is nuts. This can't happen. Nobody does that. That's reckless. So here's the two places. You want to know about reckless love? It's in this story. It's this story. That's reckless. You're going to give a third of the estate away. It's going to be gone from the family. You're going to give it to that kid who essentially went to his father and said, I wish you were dead. You're going to honor that request? And then Jesus tells the rest of the story. And they're all going, good for him. He lost everything, famine. He's going to come back. And you know what his dad's going to say? His dad's going to have guys posted at the gates and kick that kid out. Or, okay, let him in, but how about this? 5 years of probation. How about this? How about some reparations? Get me some of that. You owe me. And Jesus says, I need you to learn the heart of the Father. There's two lost sons here. Let's talk about them quickly. I won't keep you that long, I promise. But if you take this home, you might take this one home today. Don't leave it in the back. Bring it home. Take a note or two. Because there's a message for let me make sure you know this. I've taught it before, but just if you haven't heard it, prodigal, we often think means wandering or wayward or lost. Prodigal means extravagant. It's called the extravagant son because he takes all that inheritance and just blows it on one-armed bandits in Vegas. It should properly be called the prodigal father, the extravagant father. Because that's where you get reckless. Not only did he give him the inheritance, unearned, undeserved, lost, he then welcomed him home as a son. It's crazy. So when we sing that song, Reckless Love, please know this. We know God's love isn't reckless, but everyone who looks at us being the beneficiaries of that kind of love thinks that God is nuts, that he would pour out such extravagant love on his people. So here's 3 things for each of them. So 3 for the lost and the wandering. If you're the lost and the wandering, if you're in that spot, this is a funny thing. It's tricky when Christians talk about, we got to save the lost. Who knows they're lost? Right? When I was wandering away from God, I didn't know I was lost. I thought I was fine. Somebody come up to me and say, you're lost. I go, who are you? But wandering, wayward, that I can understand. And I was. People are lost. If you're the lost one or you know someone who is, here's 3 things to remember. Message for the wandering. Home is not the pigsty. Don't get used to the pigsty. There's better in store for you. God has something better, way better. We get too used to the pigsty because there's a lot of other people in the pigsty too. I went back and looked through my records. I've been involved in building 14 houses in Mexico. And you know what's interesting? I haven't gone back for a number of years. You know why? It's kind of scary to go to Mexico. And then I thought about this week and I was deeply convicted because I just said in the opener, we avoid danger, Will Robinson. So do we see that as an excuse to separate or an opportunity to engage? Tom Holland wrote a great book called Dominion, not a Christian, but he tried to answer the question, how did Christianity conquer the world? Western civilization. How did it happen? This crazy itinerant rabbi, Jewish rabbi in a weird little backwater part of the world, dies, all his disciples abandon him, scatter, and all of a sudden, it explodes. And what he attributes it to is the ancient world was filled with death, disease, famine, poverty, pandemics, viruses, all this kind of stuff, plague. And you know what? When it happened, guess who stayed? Guess who stayed and ministered to the hurting, the unclean, because they read their Bible and believed it, those early Christians. They didn't see the plague as a reason to head to the hills. They saw the plague as an opportunity to be Christ in the midst of people. That's convicting to me. I'm not as good. But I have to be reminded. So the first one is home is not the pigsty. When we built those houses in Mexico, you should see that the house they came from. And there is no greater thing that has moved me more powerfully than when you take that key and you hand that key over to a family and it transforms their life. Because for many years they thought the only home they would ever know was that dirt floor with hammered out tin cans and tarps. That's not your home. And even this one we built for you, even that's not your home. Home is not the pigsty. Second thing, it's interesting, there's a lot of controversy about the Snow White movie that came out. And I listened to an interview with who was ever playing Snow White. And it was interesting because the original one came out in 1937. So it was old-fashioned. Interestingly enough, it made like $4 billion because people were captured by the story. I mean, Disney in that time told a fascinating, fabulous story. And the person who was the lead actress, she said, well, you know, we don't have a Prince Charming in this one because essentially in the original movie, he was a stalker. You know, he's creepy. And, you know, it's not about, you know, she goes to the dwarves and she doesn't clean for them. They clean for her. You know, it's about kind of empowerment stuff. And you know what's so interesting about that Snow White original movie? She knew there was somebody out there longing for her. Not a creeper, not a stalker, but someone who loved her desperately. Second point, if you're wandering and wayward, someone out there is longing for you. Longing for you. That's not debilitating. That doesn't mean you're less. It means you're more. That somebody's out there longing for you, who isn't got a set of criteria and isn't holding your feet to the fire and telling you got to measure up. We have a Jesus who longs for you. There's a father in this parable. What he's saying is, you want to know the heart of the father? His patience. You think he didn't send people out there to check on his son every once in a while? Because when he came home, what does it say he does? He runs. He sees him while he was still a long way off, and he runs to see his son. And his son he's got his confession in place, and it's a good one, and it's right. And the father will have none of it. Put my sandals on him, put my ring on his finger, put my coat on him. You know why? Because they don't need to see my wayward son. They need to see the owner of the mansion. Third thing is this: there's a party waiting just for you. You know, there aren't many of those. Some people celebrate birthdays really well. I never experienced that growing up much. But I'll tell you when I do experience them, I do weddings. I do lots of weddings. And weddings are when there's a party just for you. And people talk about you, and people celebrate you, and they think of all the best things they can think of about you. And they avoid saying the nasty things or the very, very honest things. They just love you. There's a party waiting just for you. If you know someone who's lost and wandering and longing for hope, home is not the pigsty. Someone out there is desperately longing for you. And there's a party waiting with you as the guest of honor. Now, I told you there was a second lost son. And the second lost son won't even come into the party because he's so ticked off. And he lets his father have it with both barrels when his father comes out to him. Isn't that awesome too, that the father actually will go out to him? If I'm the father and he's being a weirdo like that, I'm like, fine. But he loves his older son. And he wants to remind his older son of his heart too. And you know what? To be honest, there's probably more. I'm an older son. I fall in that one. I need to hear Jesus say that word. I mean, I think we can occupy both spots, can't we? Times when we're wayward, and then other times when we feel pretty good about ourselves. And those poor schlubs out there who can't seem to get it right. We're never really like that, are we? Probably not really. A little bit. Here's 3 things for us to remember. Thank God for a lack of drama. The older son stayed home, and he worked the farm. He was faithful to his father. Thank God for a lack of drama. So often, you go into all these stories of people's faith and stuff, and they were cooking meth in their basement and sex trafficking, and, they were doing horrible things. And then they found Jesus. It's a great story, isn't it? It's a great story. It's not many of our stories. I used to, with youth group, I would actually, twice I did this when I'd be to these big rallies and the guy's up there talking about, his horrible life. And I would go to him, I said, could you talk to our youth and talk to them, I just want you to talk to that group and tell them about their lives. Because our kids all grew up knowing Jesus. There was probably never a moment in their life where they did not know the love of Jesus. And you know what? They came and they said to our kids, I would give my right arm to have your story. That I always knew the depth of God's love for me. If you're an older brother, thank God. Thank God for that you would not have to experience that drama. Second thing is this. The father says, my son, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. I wrote in here, all God has is yours. Don't forget it. You know what? I didn't put it in the thing to write down. I probably should have put it and said, you're always with me, which means I'm always with you. There's never a time when you're apart from me. Never. So not only am I always with you, all I have is yours. Too often as Christians, we think God is he's just giving us a little measly bit here and there. Oh, I prayed for this and God gave me a little, or this and that. It's all ours. It's already ours. Your eternity is secure. Your value in God has already been declared. You look at a cross, that's how valuable you are. Don't forget it. Never forget it. And then last thing is ask for your Father's heart. I remember the first time I heard this, and I heard it at Nate and Jordan's wedding reception. I forget who said it. It might have been Nate. That would be good if it was. And to Jordan, or it was her brother. Anyway, it's this phrase, and actually it comes from a Jack Nicholson movie, which maybe is inappropriate in church, but he said, you make me want to be a better man. I love this part. If you're an older brother, or you can be an older sister too. If you're an older brother who stayed at home and you're mad about your younger brother getting off scot-free, or people who, didn't have to really do much, ask for your Father's heart. When I see the heart of the Father, it makes me want to be a better man. When I see what Jesus does, it makes me want to be a better man. I don't want to be a better man. My wife does that for me. She makes me want to be a better man, a better father. And when I see a cross, it makes me want to be a better Jesus follower. Not so that I can get him to do something for me, but because he already did. And that's the heart of the Father. The heart of the Father is that we would know how precious these are. You want the heart of the Father? Here's a promise. You already have it. All God has is yours, and he has you. Thanks be to God. Amen.